Hi, very good morning, everyone. It's really nice to see so many of you joining us in this breakout session, so really appreciate your time with us this morning. Before I actually begin my presentation, I wanted to share and introduce the SCB Europe team. We have 3 officers. I oversee the European operations. One of our offices is in London, which I'm based, but Jason, who actually oversees Northern and Western Europe, is also part of the team. Besides Jason, there's also Peijian, or some of you would have known her as PJ. She's based in Brussels, and she's our MICE specialist for Europe. We also have Brigitta, who is based in Frankfurt. So Frankfurt office oversees the Central and Southern Europe. Beverly, she's based in Moscow, but she oversees Eastern Europe on top of Russia. We also have 2 marketing reps, one in France, Paris, the other in Italy, Milan. So you know us, you know where to find us, so please feel free to contact us if you have any interest in Europe or you have any clarifications or queries that you would like us to follow up on. So diving into the operating environment in Europe, as you all would know, the climate is quite volatile. The environment is challenging because of the various uncertainties in the geopolitical landscape, the influence of Brexit, to some extent, policy uncertainties brought about by the new Trump administration, and of course, concerns over acts of terrorism. 2017 is actually an important year for Europe, starting with the general election in Netherlands in March. France and Germany will also see their elections taking place in May and September, respectively. And these 2 upcoming elections are actually quite critical and significant for Europe because these are 2 of the largest economies in that part of the world. There are also some uncertainties due to the impending Article 50 negotiations that was triggered by UK last month. And to some extent, the uncertainties are reflected in the markets with the depreciation of pounds and the signs of waning consumer sentiments. I've mentioned about the new Trump administration creating some policy uncertainties, and actually in Europe, I've heard some murmurs from meeting planners where they shared that their clients are either postponing their events in the US or directing them to other long-haul destinations such as Canada. Terror attacks and threats are very real in Europe and is still looming in many key cities. And as a result, safety and security have become top priority for a lot of the meeting planners and owners. Amidst this volatile environment, competition continues to heat up with other destinations, upping their game, wooing the European MICE buyers. We have also seen a shift in aviation and tourism flows, with increased air connectivity to other air hubs. Singapore's air hub status is continuously being challenged, especially with Middle Eastern airlines and air hubs offering very attractive airfares, as well as accessibility and convenience through an extensive network. Besides, destinations are also competitive in Europe. Thailand, for example, has recently launched a new campaign which includes a slew of new and enhanced incentive schemes. Other destinations, like Korea and Australia, have also similarly launched MICE campaigns targeting the European market. In addition to competition from established European cities, the competition for MICE dollar is also coming from other emerging destinations. Many meeting planners I meet tell me that increasingly, second-tier European cities, as well as the longer-haul Latin American destinations, are getting very popular, and that's really because of their value-for-money proposition. But it's not all gloom and doom in Europe. The European economic recovery is expected to continue this year as well as next year. And for the first time in almost a decade, The economies in all EU member states are expected to grow and throughout 2017 and 2018. But that said, I would like to caveat that the forecast is cautiously optimistic. In this section, I'll be sharing the key trends and insights for Europe. And in general, the European demand for meetings and incentives continues, but clients are more careful with their spending. Let's look at meetings first. So for meetings, the demand from Europe continues and is set to grow. Amex forecasts that out of this growth, Germany and France are expected to register the highest growth in terms of the number of meetings as well as the number of attendees for each meeting. Although the number of meetings from the UK is expected to decline, the number of attendees, however, per meeting is expected to grow in UK. Based on what we hear from the meeting planners in the UK, meeting owners are looking at channeling the savings that they can get from holding fewer meetings towards enhancing the content and making the meetings bigger and better. They have also shared with us that safety and security, like I mentioned earlier, are top of mind for a lot of their meeting clients when they make venue decisions. And this is also reflected in the Amex study, where there's an increasing urgency related to the duty of care, including meeting planners and owners ensuring a comprehensive plan on how best to prepare for potential disruptions that may impact their meetings. The other trend is related to the millennials. As millennials make up a growing and significant portion of meeting attendees, meeting owners are actually looking at ways to appeal to these new millennials. So for example, meeting planners are looking for more creative and innovative solutions or even locations that cater to perhaps what they deem as cooler activities, as this segment is trending towards unique venues that are not well known or venues that offer something different. Moving on to incentive travel. It's still on the rise in Europe, and in fact, according to a survey by CNIT in UK, the long-haul market is buoyant, with 34% of event planners seeing an increase in the long-haul incentive travel. And Asian destinations, luckily for us, Singapore, Thailand, and Japan are currently top on the pitch list, according to CNIT's latest report. Incentive travel will continue to grow, and it has proven to be a good method to reward their employees and boost team bonding. However, we might want to note that personalization of programs to suit the attendees' needs will be increasingly important. And this is especially as the younger generation work their way up through the ranks. For example, the itinerary is unlikely going to be just a cookie-cutter type itinerary, but a bespoke program customized depending on whether the incentive group is, say, an active group, a cultural one, or foodies. And as incentive planners search for authentic experiences, we also note that CSR activities is seeing a resurgence in popularity. And this trend, which initially started as a way to legitimize incentive programs, has expanded with the movement towards doing good while out on an incentive trip. This is because CSR, as the millennials see it, helps forge meaningful connections between the destination and the delegate. So back to the topic on the younger generation. Companies in UK are also realizing that social media is actually a very excellent tool and a powerful one in creating buzz and excitement. So creating like a social media moment that incentive winners can share and brag about with colleagues and friends back home is becoming important to delegates as well. So those in the office can also see what they are missing out, and companies can use this to motivate their staff to work harder to win the next incentive. Moving on to budgets, the budgets for meetings are expected to remain rather stagnant across Europe. However, Germany is forecasted by Amex to see the biggest increase in budgets. Incentive travel budget is expected to hold steady or enjoy some increase. But that said, clients are much more careful with their spending, and they're always looking for more value as they're under growing pressure to deliver bigger and better events. And on top of that, there is always this expectation on organizers to come up with new, unique, and wow experiences to win the pitch. Moving on to the key trends in other MICE sectors. Association events continue to be a stable and consistent segment of the MICE market and a source of economic benefits for the destination and the venues that host them. There is still a strong demand for association meetings, and the number of attendance has increased. According to an ICA report, the number of international association meetings has increased by 5%. Attendance growth for the events hosted by AIPC members worldwide was healthy at 5%. And AIPC members are forecasting 4% overall expansion in attendance this year. For the exhibition sector, according to the latest UFI report, most markets in Europe declared a positive outlook, with around 80% of companies expecting increase in turnover for the past year. In the past couple of years, we have seen an increase in inquiries from European associations to host meetings in Asia and to enlarge their presence and outreach in this region. We have also hosted the inaugural editions of some of these European association meetings in Singapore. They include Spine Week and ESMO. Astro is one of the latest that we have managed to secure to launch meetings for the first time outside of Europe. So on an overall level, demand for Asia is still strong from the association sector. And again, according to AIPC member survey, association conventions and exhibitions are particularly strong in Asia and North America, with the best current growth and near-term prospects. Based on our observations in the market, international associations continue to send us inquiries about Singapore. In fact, quite a few of them are actually large associations who have shortlisted Singapore due to our strong fundamentals, our strong infrastructure, and safe environment. Also, Europe's interest in Asia offer opportunities for us to partner European PEOs and PCOs in anchoring new shows in Singapore. Out of the Asian growth prospects, Singapore continues to lead the sector with accolades for the past consecutive years by ICA and UIA. I'm also heartened to share that the British Meetings and Events Industry Survey indicated Singapore as the only Asian destination in their top 20 list of overseas destinations. So Europe continues to be an important market and a significant source market for Singapore, contributing about 11% of our total international visitor arrivals in 2016. Growth continues to be healthy in key European source markets, and despite Brexit last year, UK posted a 3% growth, Germany grew double-digit by 15%, France by 9%. And these are the three top source markets from Europe to Singapore. And in fact, 14 of the top 15 source markets from Europe actually posted year-on-year growth. And MICE is an important contributor to our tourism receipts from Europe, and on average, each business traveler spends about twice as much as a leisure visitor. So what does all this actually mean for Singapore, right? I mean, in my opinion, there is definitely potential and opportunities to tap into the economic recovery of Europe and the strength of her MICE sector. And with Singapore's strong fundamentals, infrastructure, and destination appeal, we are well placed to attract European MICE groups and events. That said, with the trends in mind, Singapore can become an even more compelling destination if we are able to curate and deliver unique, authentic experiences that inspire creativity and motivate the European delegates. SCB also hope to work closely with our Singapore industry partners like yourself to ensure we continue to invest and adopt technology and innovation to enhance our MICE experiences. Unfortunately, I must say that there's still a general perception that Singapore is expensive and sterile, especially when they compare us with other Asian destinations such as Thailand, Hong Kong, and Shanghai. So on the PR and marketing front, in our bids and pitches, we will continue and we hope to work with industry players as well to profile and strengthen our value for money proposition and highlight success stories and testimonials of clients so as to overcome such entrenched misperception. And this is especially critical now with the currency fluctuations and the tightening of corporate budgets. Our key strategies to attract MICE business from Europe, I've put it into 3 separate buckets here that you see on the slide. We'll continue to focus on our key source markets, UK, Germany, France, Switzerland, and leverage high potential markets such as Italy, Russia, and Scandinavia. We will also continue to cultivate advocates and multipliers, deepen our trade partnerships, sharpen our business development efforts so as to drive quality leads and conversions. Not forgetting on the marketing front, we will also continue to strengthen Singapore's appeal and entrench its position as a preferred MICE destination. This is a snapshot of our work plans and key initiatives for the year. Some of you would have participated in the trade shows in Europe with us. We will continue to be present at these platforms, and we will hope to see you at the platforms with us as well. Partnerships is an important area for SCB Europe, especially in the MICE space. And we will be stepping up and strengthening our partnerships with trade-in market and engage, educate, and deepen our relationships with them and their network. To drive M&I groups, which are typically smaller in numbers in Europe, we have launched Inspire program at IMEX Frankfurt last year, and we have received positive feedback and response. So we will be extending the Inspire program for another year. For channel development, we will also continue to step up our BD efforts in key and high potential markets through series of roadshows and sales calls. And we look forward to support from our Singapore partners in partnering us when we host our European guests during our FAM trips here in Singapore. We will continue, as usual, with our PR and marketing efforts in our key markets so as to strengthen our appeal and continue our position as top of mind destination. I hope you will join me and lend your support to STB in Europe, and I look forward to working closely with you. Thank you.
Thank you, and a very good morning to everyone. As Chris says, my name is Kershing. I head the SCB Americas operations based out of New York. And supporting me for our MICE effort is actually our area director, Michelle, who's actually here with me today as well. I've only flashed actually only my MICE team since the focus today is really on the MICE business in the US. So you know my team, and for those of you who are in the US market doing the MICE work, you'll be quite familiar with them. I've got Divine, who's based out of New York, covering East Coast US as well as East Canada. Ambrose, based out of the Vancouver office, covering our West Coast as well as West Canada. Michelle, I just introduced, and we're actually in the midst of strengthening our headcount by one more, possibly in San Francisco, that will come on board within the next 2 months. Oops. Okay, well, when me and my team were putting together the deck for this presentation actually last week, and that's how late we were. Steve Bannon, for those of you who follows American politics, got kicked out of the Security Council. His right-hand woman, Katie McFarland, is strongly rumored to be the next ambassador to Singapore. And while this is happening, we have the visit of President Xi, who was visiting Trump at Mar-a-Lago. And while the visit was going on, President Trump decided to sign an executive order to bomb Syria without going through Congress. And now we have actually a ticking time bomb with the escalating North Korea situation. Well, suffice to say, there's never been a boring day in the US since January 26, the inauguration of the 45th President of the United States. I don't proclaim to be an expert in US politics, and though this is really not what this session is all about, but it has really become quite impossible to go about your business in the US without understanding and actually more accurately navigating these very volatile market conditions where things change by the day. On the economic front, signs are actually looking really healthy. Unemployment in the US is all-time low at 4.7%. Businesses are generally bullish about the deregulation that Trump has promises to bring, especially in the finance and energy sector. And this has spurred real consumer confidence as well as strong US dollars. So generally in the US, the market is bullish, the businesses are bullish, consumer confidence are bullish, and people are spending. And if you look at what has been dominating the headline over the last, actually coming to 100 days of Trump administration, in fact, I think 100 days is on the 29th of April. Really, when you look at what's dominating the press for over the last 100 days, there are a few key ones that I think for us in the MICE industry are areas that we should watch for. One of which is what we call the Border Adjustment Tax, or BET, that we call in the US, the renewable energy, as well as his policy on immigration and border control issues, such as the travel ban, as well as the latest ban on electronic equipment. Though it's uncertain if BET, or the border adjustment tax, will eventually be passed, it is something that would have real impetus for business to stay within the US, which we know will impact the flow of our business travelers. So what the BET basically does is really incentive for businesses to kind of bring their business back to the US with strong import taxation for some of the businesses that's functioning out there. It is a key topic in the US, and it's been dominating the press in terms of how this is going to really look at inflow and backflow of a lot of businesses from around the world back to the US. And that will have impact for us both in terms of the business traffic as well as corporate meetings. So it's something that we're watching really closely. The other area that has gotten a lot of attention is really his policy on immigration and border control, which I think has been very much written about. And it has really generally created the impression that US is less welcoming than it was before. We think that this is actually an area of opportunity for us, in the sense that, like what Yenny shared briefly, we actually see meetings being diverted out from the US and actually more into Canada for now. But we do think that it will see an outflow in terms of diversion of some of these meetings from the US to other parts of the world. And it actually plays well for Singapore in terms of strengthening our position as being this really neutral political and economic countries and a welcoming visa policy. Moving away slightly from the Trump effect, I want to talk a little bit about sort of the general travel trend that we are seeing in the US. Over the last a year or so, we actually see more affordable travel out of the US to Asia, and this is largely contributed by the proliferation of new routes by Chinese carriers that's been very aggressive in launching new flights as well as launching new frequency. If you look at really the flight capacity between China and North America, just really between 2013 and 2015, it actually grew by 60%, and that's how much load we have. Correspondingly, because of this glut of supply that we are seeing in the US, cost of travel and flight costs from the US to Asia has dropped drastically. I'll give you an example. On some months, China Airlines could be running a promotion from whether is it LA or New York to Singapore for US $500. And that's actually cheaper than for me to fly from New York, where I'm based, to visit my office in LA. And really, that really changed the dynamic of what travel means and long-haul travel for the Americans. It has just really become so much more accessible, and it's become so compelling, both for the leisure segment and I think also from the BT MICE segment in terms of attendance building and attracting delegates to attend some of our trade events. It's become a lot more compelling. The other trend that we're looking at as well is the business traffic. And again, it kind of mirrors what you see in Europe as well, that we're seeing younger demographic of business traveler coming out from the US. And it's also largely contributed by the growth of some of our tech community out of Silicon Valley. So you're seeing a new breed of business traveler that used to be baby boomers, that used to be 50 and above, that used to come from your Wall Street, your pharmaceutical, but with the growth of the tech industry in the US, the demographic of your business traveler is starting to change. We think that this could be an area of opportunity for us to capitalize on because the younger generation of business traveler is really about work-life balance, and they're really a lot more amicable to mixing business with leisure, and the term in the US, we call it bleisure. It is really a concept about intermixing your business trip with leisure trip, and it allows us the opportunity to upsell any business traveler who's coming to this part of the world to either bring a partner or to extend their stay. So it's an interesting development in terms of the BT traffic, and it's an area that we are really closely looking at. So what does this mean for the MICE industry? When you look at what's happening with Trump administration, his policies or lack of policies, his views in terms of being more nationalistic and bring business back to the US, his border adjustment tax, his immigration policy. How do we kind of make sense of this environment, and what does it mean for the MICE industry? I mean, there was a recent article actually last week by New York Times, and it basically says, can nonprofits survive Trump? When you look at his intention to cut federal funding to the nonprofit sector, as well as correspondingly the implication of the heavy tariff on imports that I kind of mentioned, which is the BET, as well as the repatriation of undocumented immigrants. There's a general sense that cost of doing business in the US is just going to go up. And how is that going to impact businesses that has events in the US? And whether does it mean that the increasing costs may push some of the association to move their US events elsewhere. On the labor costs, we think that it's going to be a mid to long-term impact. Right now, that there is active raids going on by ICE, which is Immigration Control Borders, at some of the gateway cities to try to round out undocumented immigrants. And the business community is predicting that it may not be a direct impact now, but in the mid to long term, labor cost is going to go up across industry. On the area of federal funding, we also feel that US-based associations may have to seek alternative revenue streams to mitigate the shrinkage of US revenue that comes from the nonprofit sector. So this is, again, an interesting area for us to keep our pulse on and to monitor closely. Nobody really knows what's going to translate in terms of what's the next move for this. The other key areas in terms of shift in the policy of the Trump administration is really in the shift in the government's position on civil rights and liberal issues. And we have already seen impact in terms of groups that have decided to have their meetings outside of the US because of disagreement to some of these policy issues. So the Canada group, I think it was a Girl Guide group, was one of the recent ones that decided to cancel their entire MICE events in the US, moving them to Canada. So it is a real issue, and we are actually starting to see some of the implications in terms of the kind of events that US can successfully attract. So when you couple this with the less welcoming immigration policy, it becomes an area that I think for Brand USA, it is a big concern, and they are watching closely. But this correspondingly also means that it could be an opportunity for us out in Singapore as well, which I'll elaborate a little bit. The other areas to watch really on the association conference sector or the non-profit sector is really the increasing focus on advocacy. And this is really also in response to the rise of the uncertainty with the policy that's happening in the US. Because of the fact that there's a lot of uncertainty with the change of position and policy, non-profit and especially associations are going to stay much closer to home, focusing a lot more on lobbying efforts for their members to navigate these really challenging times with regards to the changing policy of the Trump administration. And we see that from the research, the few clusters that's likely going to be impacted by this advocacy are medical, healthcare, social, and environment. So those are the few clusters that will likely step up on lobbying effort and increase their advocacy piece out of the US. Tax reform as well, the bet that I spoke about just now, designed to really keep businesses in the US, could also really correspondingly compel a lot of our associations to keep their meetings statewide and grow domestically. Because at the end of the day, association goes where their members go, and association champions the cause of their members. So these are the two factors that's going to play into really possibly a deprioritization of global expansion plan for a lot of our association clients, and kind of force them to focus back domestically with the needs of the members. So another areas that we're keeping a close watch on in terms of how this is going to pan out for our association businesses. So what does it all mean? If I've confused you enough at this point, and you're looking for the silver bullet in the sense that, so is Singapore in a better place or are we in the worst place? I hate to disappoint you, but we're really navigating uncharted waters. And it's not just for the MICE industry, and it's not just for Singapore. For a lot of the industry and a lot of businesses in the US, it is really navigating uncharted waters in terms of how the policy is going to pan out. What we really want to do is really to see how we can better help navigate the changing market conditions and really sharpen the identification of the new business amidst the climate that's in the US. Focus on areas of opportunity that's potentially to come with the deregulation, be it finance or energy, and then really also explore some of the more niche area in key clusters like technology, biomed, and chemical. For that, we'll be working really closely with EDB to really sell the whole of Singapore's story and really be more focused on identifying where are these industries that we can take opportunity on. We're also going to work with ASAE, which many of you are familiar with in the US, to really focus much sharper on this cluster approach. We also think that Singapore's position as being neutral and stable, and with the US trade surplus, which is really important to Trump in these days, it is really a narrative that is going to play very well and play very much to our strength amidst the changing climate in the US right now. On the corporate meeting strategy and how we look at a corporate meeting, I mean, we maintain a cautiously optimistic outlook, but like I shared earlier, if businesses do flow back to the US with the implementation of BET and some of the import tariff taxes, we do think that some of the business traffic would be impacted and possibly corporate meetings as well. We will maintain our destination air cover in the market, and obviously we will also continue with all our partnership with our key intermediaries, with Merritt's, Humberschool, Conference Direct, to make sure that we remain top of mind in the market. For exhibition and trade shows, these are some of the key platforms that we are in, CISO, IAEE Expo, and this year we are also test bedding a new platform called the Global Connect that is put up by the Trade Show Executive. Last year, we organized a small delegation with CISO, and it's a small delegation of independent show organizers. We brought them to Singapore and really opened their eyes to the potential of the Asian market, and these are show organizers that have not expanded beyond the US. It has been really successful, and it is an initiative that we plan to continue this year as well, together with CISO. Another area that I'm really quite excited about, which we kind of see as a green shoots for the US, is really the MLM industry. It's an area that we've decided to do a bit more deep diving into this year. And for those of you who's in the MICE business, especially in the US, you know that this is a really lucrative piece of business for us. On average, each one of your MLM group is between 8,000 to 20,000, and that's the size that we're looking at. And also direct selling, an MLM industry we call for short, is on a bullish growth in the US. It grew by 7.7% globally. And I think what's important is that Asia Pacific actually contributes 46% of the growth of the MLM industry. And out of this industry, you'll see that the top 50 MLM companies of the world contributes 84% of the revenue. And like I mentioned earlier, 46% of that is selling into Asia Pacific. We think that this could really be an area that the US office wants to focus on and want to deep dive on because of the size of the industry and also to look at it being a fertile ground for hunting of our new leads. So when you look at the global top 50 companies in terms of revenue for the MLM or direct selling industry, you'll find that 29 of them are actually based out of the US. And when you look at really the 29 global MLM company, you find that for most of us that's in this business, they are the names that you're familiar with, whether are they Amway, they are your Usana, they are your Herbalife. But at the same time, they are also names that are very familiar with every other destination. You have Dubai chasing them, you have Seoul chasing them, you have everyone else that's on their heels, pursuing this piece of business. So an area that we really want to deep dive into for the US office this coming year is to really deep dive a little bit more into the MLM industry and really figure out what are perhaps the tier 2 of this MLM industry. They are in the pre-globalization stage, which will then ensure that we are in it in terms of the first mover position, and it will also allow us to kind of get in before they are the size of your Herbalife and your Usana. So it is a piece of research that my team is doing right now out in the US, and we'll be happy to share the full results of this research with you when it's completed. And to summarize, this is just a quick snapshot of our work plan. I don't have time to go into every single one, but these are the trade show platform, the partnership, as well as some of the marketing outreach across the many different print and digital publications in the US. Michelle and I will be around after this session, so if you're interested to participate in any of our platform or to find out a little bit more about any of the initiatives that I've just discussed, please come by to say hello. And with that, I thank you.
For taking the time to be here with us. I know some of you have to fly in for this. We're going to start off very quickly just to talk about the millennial segment. Let's define who they are. Maybe if I could just go down each of you, can you just describe very briefly in 1 or 2 words, what does the millennial MICE visitor mean to you?
The millennial market for us as an experienced marketing agency is key for us. They either make the decisions or are key stakeholders in the decisions that if our clients, whether they're B2C or B2B. So we have to look after them and we have to know them.
Okay, Janet?
Well, I don't know. I'm probably the most mature millennial in this panel here. I think they fall within the age category of, I would say, 36. Well, some argue, if you look at all the definitions, 30 and upwards. And I would actually say that more and more, based on discussions, you have the young millennials coming up. They're very much savvy on, I would say, the iPad. And then at the same time, our own experiences is that they're very keen to listen. I would say the young millennials are.
So they listen.
Yep.
All right, Daniel.
Sorry, for us, the millennial is really a big part of our audience. We organize our own trade show and exhibitions, and probably I would say it depends how you define a millennial. We were asking before the exact age group, but I would say probably at least 30 to 40% of our audience is in that age bracket.
Okay, Adeline?
Yeah, for us, our business is actually planning end-to-end meetings across the world and in a very globalized way. So the millennials to us are not just the attendees who go to all these meetings, which is obviously increasing from all the presentations that you've seen, earlier on. But it's also the people who are actually planning the meetings, because very often a lot of the meetings they would have a committee of people. And because for us, we always have a planner who interacts with a meeting owner, and if that meeting owner or his team, is trying to look for a millennial experience, that's actually very important for us to make sure that we're able to cater to that.
Okay, all right. And I know, Andrew, you have some numbers to share with us just on the size of the market. All right. Okay, I think there is something wrong with this clicker.
Yeah, but if I may jump in, I would say the millennials are probably the most educated and connected generation in modern history. They are digital natives versus us who are digital migrants. But I think most importantly is where they are in terms of the spending power. So if you look at the slide, close to 60% of the millennials in the world will reside in Asia. 2/3 will come from China and India, so the most formidable force. And if you look at the spending, it's going to increase by 1.6 times in less than a decade. So that's something that we want to watch out for in terms of the MICE expenditure.
Okay, can we just have a quick show in the room and maybe on the panel even, I'm not sure. How many millennials are amongst us today? Anyone?
How many people are too shy to put their hands up?
Okay, so good. We have some. Let's go on next to, we've got a short video to hear what the millennials say or don't say about themselves. This is a video from CNBC that was taken at Millennial 2020. It's a summit just for millennials, and the inaugural summit happened in Singapore last year. So let's take a look. I hope you like that. I thought that was really cute. Multifarious, and I had to look that up. I think, it goes to say that no two millennials are alike. Okay, so we've talked about who they are. Let's understand a bit about what they really want. So we know that millennials really want experience. I think even in Lionel's presentation earlier on, we talked about how it's really about a much deeper overall package. It's not just a pure service or product, but really an overall package and experience. Do you see the shift also happening in the meetings and events industry? Maybe, Adeline, if I can get you to kick it off first.
Yes, definitely. So I think especially when it comes to incentives, a lot of the sales force today is made up of a majority of millennials, and these are the people who are the ones that are supposed to perform to be able to get on an incentive trip. So when the meeting owners come to us, we might be planning this meeting year on year, but every single experience or destination that we're choosing needs to be different, and then the appeal needs to be different as well. So they will come to us very specifically to say that, well, I have a budget, and you probably know my budget from previous year, but what else can I do with that budget in a new location to make the people actually want to go there? So there's a lot of creativity, ideas, and innovation that we need to think about in terms of the whole experience. But at the same time, we can't forget the basics, which is that when it's an incentive, they expect it to be seamless. The whole customer experience, needs to be good from the time they step out the door to the time they go home.
So it's really about more and more. And on to this next slide. Daniel, I know you mentioned to me previously that the people coming to your event, it's not just about content, right? Previously, there's a lot of focus on what content we have, quality content, but people get that online, they get that on the different online digital channels. What else are they looking for when they come to meetings?
I think you've got to define, there's really two groups of events. There is the associations, and I put this event in that, where people from the same industries come to gather together, and there's my end of the business where our job is to market and attract people to come. And I think there is so many events out there. Every day you're reading new events being launched. So really the consumer, the customer, wants to do something more than just listen to a PowerPoint, because you can listen to any single speaker on YouTube or around, and it's about that gathering, because ultimately people go to events to do business, to interact, and we see, I define a millennial as, really, there's digital native, there's Generation Z, there's people who, use the internet as their primary source of communication, and that's what they come for. It's to talk to new people, meet new people, engage in new people. So we will talk a little bit more about the experience, but I think we need to define what the experience is. The experience isn't just putting a light on, or it's people want to meet, come away with business cards, and justify, because they have to justify why this conference, not this one, and why Singapore, not
another.
Thailand, London, America. We'll talk about that later.
Okay, yeah, so we'll go into that. Joel, you know, I know you've worked with a lot of different clients all over, and they just want a whole package, right? You mentioned that before. So you do a lot of what is now commonly called life events or life experiences. Can you share that a little bit more?
Yeah, I think, I mean, we represent clients in these large events like South by Southwest, whatnot, but I think what our clients want is to create a deeper emotional connection with the consumer. I guess for a consumer, they need to know the brand, they need to know what that brand stands for. I think that's comes to authenticity. I think to Daniel's point, I think you need to understand who they are, and then they also need to understand who you are. You need to tell that story. I think from a relationship perspective, there's a lot of noise in the market, and you know, when you're looking at content specifically, there's so much crap out there. And so it's about creating that right story that's going to attach to your consumer or to your client's consumer. So then you can build that campaign around a set of interactives, a set of tactics.
Okay, so I think I really see that actually as an opportunity for MICE, right, for the meetings and events industry, because people don't just want to see the product or touch the product, they want that whole experience. You've all said, you know, they're expecting a lot more. So we've defined who they are, we've kind of talked about what they want. Now let's talk about the how. How exactly can we go about providing this experience? And I think the first point I want to bring up is really around customization. You know, Coca-Cola has done this, Nutella has done this. People want things that are personalized and unique. How are you facilitating this within your corporate business environment?
Can I just...
Yeah, Jenna.
You know, for the MICE business, whether it's interaction, networking, and business, I think if we're speaking about the millennials, I would say that even before the millennials, this would be something that's a very important factor. I think the interest amongst the millennials and a mature audience perhaps may differ, but I think what is critical if you're doing a corporate meeting or an association, what is the objectives that the person wants to get out of it? So interaction or business networking or anything really would be special tailored onto whatever the needs are, be it an association or corporate. You have a corporate client who wants to have an interaction, they would know the attention to detail would be important, is they have a beautiful environment, but seating would be a very critical part because of the interaction. So I would say that yes, it's everything that you mentioned, and perhaps maybe the young millennials would be more important. But I don't think this is changing. I think it's only attuning to the kind of audience that you have. I don't know about the rest of the others, what you feel, but
Daniel,
I would say, yeah.
jump in there?
So I slightly disagree with you, because I think the challenge that is being faced is every product around us is being personalized, and if you look at most of the events industry, it needs to, I mean, we spoke about this previously, you know, take an oil and gas event that's quite a conservative or an aviation industry, in 10 years' time, the executives are all going to be people who will be quite more casually dressed, that will be the office place is changing. So if the event is still a PowerPoint presentation with a dinner in the evening and that, it's not going to work, you know. And just of our background, when I first started this whole dealing with corporates and the whole idea of trying to connect them to technology, I'm not going to mention the corporate name, they were like, oh, what do we need you? We're one of the biggest companies in the world. You know, the startups and the technology, we're lucky to meet us. Fast forward 2-3 years, they called us up begging, we've dropped the ball, we need to be ahead. And many times you see in the industry that everything's changing, that there's no reason why the MICE industry. So I think what all of us who are involved need to realize that we need to make things, whether that's that little bit more informal, and should be bracing themselves that yes, you can have fun at an event, whether it's a cocktail making evening instead of a reception, whether it's taking over Ansiang Hill, or whether it's just having a bit more fun in the conference, because that's what people want.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
I think you're onto something there. I think you've got to have meaningful experiences, and you've got to have a personal experience, and that comes to knowing your client, knowing your customer's client. I think that happens in a physical way, but I think before you get to that physical way, that physical engagement, there's got to be some research done beforehand, and there also has to be a lot of digital engagement as well. So when we see engagement, and experience, we see both physically and digitally, and they combine together to create a story.
Okay, yeah, and so we'll talk about technology and digital a little bit more, but I think what I'm hearing is correct, Janet, you kind of feel that you don't think it's changed that much, but Daniel disagrees and said, no, it really has to change to really get that customization.
I didn't make myself clear. Maybe I'm speaking English,
I hope we're not
right?
starting a fight.
I'm actually no, this is going to be a fight, but hello, excuse me, what I said was that business interests, right, networking and having that interaction has not actually changed. You have to attune it to what Joel was saying, attune to the clients. I'm not saying that, okay, I know today is a lot of PowerPoint presentation, but that would be useful. But I'm not actually differing very much from you. And of course, people will still be casually dressed, right? Yes.
You're looking great. Right?
Thank you. But
so it's not just about the clothes
what I meant was, whether it's millennials or the mature ones, these three components, the components of interaction, business, and frankly, objective, and attune it, whether you do a mixology cocktail or whether everybody wants to have a little bit of a chit-chat, or, in a way, I'm sort of agreeing.
Well, I would like to actually share that.
Now she wants to
I
have a
think
fight.
Everyone has very valid points.
Okay. And you're here to really try and moderate
and
what's
I think
going
it's
on.
really about making the person attending the meeting actually craft his own experience.
Yes.
So what we can only do is to provide everything there, but what we are doing with the technology is to allow them to actually design what that meeting meant for them.
Okay.
So when they're able to go and post about, that cocktail event that they've gone to that was, so exciting, and also be able to interact with their colleagues, using even before they get to the event, at the event, after the event. I mean, those are the kind of things that we're enabling them to kind of shape their whole experience. And that's what the millennials are looking for, that ability to connect, not just when they're there, but throughout the whole experience, even before they get to the destination.
Okay, so really using technology to enable that customization, and as you've seen on stage, you have all different types of audiences, so maybe customization is very important to really cater to different audiences. But moving on from customization, we know it's also about engagement. Initially, there's a lot of talk, usually corporates are very keen on measuring ROI or return on investment, but now because of the millennials, it's not just enough to send them off on an incentive trip or to buy them gifts. They want to feel engaged, they want to feel a much deeper connection, and it's really about return on engagement or ROE. So what are your thoughts on this, and as event owners or agencies, is this something that is very fluffy, or are you actually able to measure and track it and report it? Sure.
Measuring it, recording it, I think it comes down to actually setting the expectations at the start. So when we sit with our client, before it's a sales kickoff, before it's an auto show, before it's a brand campaign, whatever it may be, there's got to be some clear measurable outcomes. And those measurable outcomes have to be real. And I think when we create campaigns or linked experiences or journeys, whatever you want to call them, they come from insight. They come from research, they come from brand understanding. And I think to create a journey, you have a brand story, you have to be authentic, right? And so then you must be able to convince the audience that that's who you are. I think from a millennial perspective, they see right through that. So if you're not authentic and you're saying you're presenting something you're not, they'll see right through it. So.
Okay, so this brings me actually to my next point about authenticity, right? It's all about that brand story. Even from STB, this is something we've really been working a lot on the last few years in terms of our destination brand. How do we bring out the heart and soul of Singapore? So, you mentioned about this already. What else does it mean to some of the other panelists? And I think there's a question here that we've got 5 votes on, which is how do you increase brand loyalty with the millennial? How do you increase brand loyalty? Maybe Daniel, can you talk to us? How do you get people to keep coming back to your event, for example?
So I think we saw on one of the other slides before these big trends of sharing, economy, etc. The big one which we use for brand loyalty is building a community and building an ecosystem around you. And we're very fortunate. We organize our shows in America, in Europe, in Asia. And what's amazing is seeing the same groups of people that will travel, and then they're your best advocates. You know, I say if you want to bring 100 people to a party, ask 10 people to bring 10 people each, and that's your best way. And I think brand loyalty comes from people seeing that you're true to what you believe. You know, you see it with Nutella, Diet Coke. All of us have our things that we enjoy, and I think it's about giving people an experience. And I think from our side, we do it by, we always look at things of thinking, what does the customer want? You know, it's like, what do people want? They want to meet people, they want to enjoy themselves, they want to have fun and not be pressured. And that's what we try to do. And it's the informality, it's that little bit of not trying to take yourself too seriously. And I think we're lucky because that's also the way the industry, you know, I know at a government event, KPIs are very important, but you're seeing now certainly in the tech sector and others, you know, these companies, we don't have KPIs, you know, see what you create. So I think different thinking, but this is the...
We'll have to have you talk to the government.
Yeah, I think KPIs are good, don't get me wrong, but I think that what we're seeing is people now when they go to events come back aren't like, well, what's your action point afterwards? Saying, well, I met people, I had a good time, and I'm seeing people to follow up with. So I think we build brand loyalty through building a community.
I really would say it's shared interest, isn't it? At the end of the day, if you have whatever you're doing, and if 100 people have a shared interest, whether you're talking about New World wines and they love drinking, apart from understanding what it is, they would continue to travel. If you like about sort of art on the floor, whether it's calligraphy or whether it's carpet and all that, people will come. So it's finding what interest the party. And I would say that to me would be where authenticity is. I find that with whether it's millennials or with people interested, they love, if they did come to Singapore, they would say, you know, just show me what the community does. What they are interested is engaging on a very sort of local basis.
Okay. Well, we have a question here. Maybe I'll just try and see whether our panel can address it as well. Event owners are wanting more for less cost. So it's about cost. Are they willing to pay for experience which costs more to create and deliver? Adeline, what's your thoughts on this? Does it necessarily cost a lot more? Or are your clients willing to pay more for such experiences?
Well, what we're actually trying to educate our clients to do is to kind of shift the concept when you manage a budget. So for example, if you have a limited budget, but you want a great experience, then perhaps you should think about how many people you actually want to bring to the meeting. Because just by cutting meeting numbers of people and just making it more of an exclusive kind of thing, instead of saying that you're just, you know, want to cater to 100 people at this price, let's say you do it at a 50 pack, but you give them a much more elevated. So that's the kind of thing that we're trying to consult and advise them to do versus cutting their program, you know, or cutting ends around the actual experience. And it is, we are seeing the trend, well, globally, that a lot of people actually like that idea because it, especially if we are looking at, you know, whether it's an in-company internal meeting or whether it's a incentive where they're trying to, you know, promote, or whether it's like a roadshow or product launch. All of this, you know, by making very practical decisions around what your cost per person is, but not at the expense of the experience, normally would actually encourage them to be able to do more. And they see the ROI there, because when people have a good experience, you get more out of it.
So it doesn't necessarily require big budgets, but with a little bit more, actually, they can get a lot more out of it. Daniel, very quickly, and then we'll come to Joel.
I'm a big believer that it's about creating value. You know, if you value something, you know, all of us here have nice possessions and nice things that you want to have, you'll pay for it. And I think that, you know, first, you know, people have said to me, you know, Singapore, cost more. I don't think it is anything to do with the cost. I think you've got a very, you've got an amazing place with amazing things. So it's not, if people I find are price sensitive, thinking, oh, I'll do my event there because it's cheaper, then, you pay peanuts, you get monkeys sometimes,
Always.
always, it's about value. I think everything you do, the same if you're setting a ticket price or a sponsorship or an exhibition, if people value it, they'll pay. And that, I think, is the main thing, is you have to find value. And
okay, so great tips. I think it's really about value, and then as Adeline said, it's being able to see what more they can get out of just a little bit more. Joel,
It's also the objective, the balance. If all the millennials want to come and watch, say, our Formula One, and they totally get it, because, they're all, as I said earlier on, they're all very sort of savvy on information, and then but they need someone to be able to actually work things out. They would say, we love to come to the Formula One, and we don't mind staying in a 3-star. They're very practical. But what is the interest? They're not coming over and saying, look, can you get me a cheap ticket? Where all they want is, if they want to pit, they're prepared to pay, and then they're prepared to
it's a trade-off somewhere else.
Yeah, so the value interest is really, in my opinion, is key. Know what the client wants, whether it's a millennial or somebody else's, and if you're a mixed audience, you tailor-made everything, yeah.
So Joel, I know you have a few slides. I'm just going to let you take us through some of your pointers and how you feel we can bring up the brand story.
Yeah, I guess from our side, we consider ourselves storytellers, and so whatever engagement we do, and we work with some of the biggest tech clients in the world and auto clients, it's obviously telling us an authentic story. I think millennials were not born entitled; they were born enlightened. Enlightened. They were always.
Janet's laughing. I don't know if she believes you.
They're the information generation. They're the information generation, and so when we define what success is for a brand, and especially a campaign around that influences or impacts millennials, it must be tied to those specific metrics.
Okay. So you also believe in KPIs and they're important.
Yes and no. I think. To Daniel's point, I think we work with some very new age tech companies, and we work with some very legacy tech companies. And within the legacy tech companies, they are all about pushing leads into a customer journey, and put them into a nurture journey to tier 1, tier 2. What's my ROI in how long? Whereas the new age, it's all about experience, and it's about numbers, and it's about getting people through the door and creating that buzz so they can go from 4,000 people in this year to 6,000 people next year.
Okay.
And it's a free event. So that's the difference in thinking, because these new age tech companies are also run by very millennial influenced crowds as well.
Okay.
I think when we look at it from an experiential perspective, what we do is we never make we don't make small plans. I think whatever the platform, and again it's digital and it's physical. I think if it's big or small, you need to come to the table, or we come to the table with not just operationally how it would work, but also we engage our creative guys, our strategy team, our accounts team, and more so now. And we've just recently hired a tech expert. And that tech expert will tell us, how we can all incorporate VR into an experience. And I guess we'll speak about technology later, but I think technology goes up and down in the use of it, and so it's got to be believable.
Okay.
I think to stay on message is really key, and really provide that immersive experience. Whether it's sense 6-5 senses. Whether it's a touch, feel, again, is it digital, is it physical?
So I hope we've incorporated that well outside. You can kind of have avatars and go and touch and feel and do different things. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Okay. I think, I guess, it must be shareable. Everything we do now, every event that we go to, I think if we're speaking about millennials specifically, I think it must be shareable, and they are your content creators. But they are your vehicles for communicating as well. So you must provide them the platform to push your brand message out.
Okay, great. Daniel, that's your slide. So we're going to move on to talk about, beyond just authenticity, customization, and engagement. you've said now it has to be many different things because you're catering to such a wide audience. Can you tell us about InnoFest? How are you doing it? How are you bringing in that multiple formats? I think we're very used to just the traditional online and offline, but now we're seeing content mixed with creativity. We're seeing basically education with entertainment, and some events, they go beyond professional development to even personal development. Tell us what's happening.
So I think one of the challenges which we have is we say as one of our mantra of our organizations, we're as comfortable at Burning Man as we are at Davos and the World Economic Forum, because we have a few stakeholders. We've government stakeholders, we've corporates, we've the entrepreneurs and the investors and the technology community. So our problem is we have to make sure that we cater for everyone and at the same time cater for what we believe is our unbound and our way. And I think the way we try and do it is when people ask us to describe, we say we're a mixture of a trade show. We have I think we have this year over 450 exhibitors. We're a conference. We've got 5 stages. We're going to be about 8,000 people, roughly 30 to 40% international attendees, 75% senior decision makers, and we're a festival. And what I mean by that, we have 35 side events, evening activities. Because if you're a corporate, you said it on your slides before about customization. It's now not just saying if you're a gold partner, your logo is going to be double the size, because that's not really justification of a spend. It's about, we say you own your own event. So we have Oracle are launching their accelerator. We have Unilever's startup competition. We have Singtel's VC forum. We have something out there.
So it's a real convergence of different industries, different companies.
Every partner, we like to try and give them something. Now, it makes more work for us, and it's a logistical challenge, but that's how we've grown. I think what we're pleasantly surprised is how the whole, if we can just focus on Asia, we've seen over the past 3 years here how our numbers have doubled each time, and really the surprisingness of really the power that Singapore has of being this nexus point, and we have, it's really now turned into, this is like our flagship Asia event, where it really is East meets West.
Yeah, so I think that addresses one question, which was about, how Singapore is too small, we really need more regional visitors. So you're saying actually by really acting as a nexus, bringing in a lot of different content to bring in different people that's helped your event to grow? Because
we cater, look, I think the other thing that we realized is you have to cater, we're very much saying our Asia event very much is an Asia event with some of the skills, if you look at each different event we do, they're all slightly different based on culture and audience and things. So we're trying to personalize each one. There's no point what we do in, let's say, Israel, that's a bit more lively, that, it's much more focused on others, so try to deal with both.
So all this festivalization, is it applicable to traditional industries, or is it only really for tech or the millennials? Andrew, can you share, I know you've worked with some of these other festivalized type of events as well.
Well, I think we have heard a lot about unconference, but we have not heard something like unexhibition, for example. And I think festivalization is very important in how you curate the experience, and I think it can take in 2 ways. One is within the event. I think Daniel has mentioned about InnoFest Unbound. If you use finance as a sector, which can be pretty old school, we had a fintech festival last year, and well, we can say that fintech is more the avant-garde, the young, and the millennials. But the way we curate the event is almost like a congress festival, right? When networking, I think the young will really want to network in a more casual environment. The whole Singapore food experience will be very different. It cannot be functional. And I think the other way is to look at festivalization as a destination. So when we launched our Singapore Design Week, I think when business delegates come to Singapore to attend the International Furniture Fair Singapore as a trade show, they are also looking at design trails, which they can enjoy. Where are the design schools or institutions that could take experience in? And we have Singapura, which is also a B2C component. And we do see a mix of that hybrid, where we have B2B, B2C, a little bit of the experience that wraps around the whole city, so that the whole city comes alive when there is a big business event.
Okay, so we can see actually it's not just the millennials or not just the tech sector. We actually can apply festivalization or hybrid events to a lot of other industries as well. Okay, so we've really talked about the who, the what they like and how to go about doing it. We can't really talk about millennials without talking about technology and big data. A lot of that has been said earlier as well. Joel, can you just share with us a little bit more about what you've done with IBM?
So we are the event agency of record for IBM globally, and I think that's 18 years of hard work, but it also allows us 18 years of trust, and we build up. And this for the IBM Cognitive Studio, which we launched at South by Southwest, was a huge. They shelled out a fair bit of money on trust, and they are again quite a big company. They know they need to change. They need their idea for this cognitive studio was to engage the millennial market and to change opinion of who IBM is from in the millennial space, and engage them in a way that doesn't immerse them in technology. It's immerse them in the 5 senses. And so it was touch, it was feel, it was brain power.
So you could use technology to do all of those things as well?
I think IBM's big thing at the moment, or it has been for the last few years, is the cognitive response, and they have Watson, which is a cognitive platform. It just basically, so on the way into the studio, you were asked 20 questions, and by the time you got to the door, it knew, through a set of algorithms, it knew what cocktail you were going to have at the bar. It knew what flavour ice cream that you wanted, and it was mixed. You could go and play rock paper scissors against a robot, and you would lose every time because it knew that you were either angry, you were sad, and it was we did this by on the way in. After you got those 20 questions, you got given an RFID badge, and with every place you went around the studio, you tagged in, and it was. And so that was an immersive program, but it took a lot of trust.
So maybe trust. Ellen, I know over at AMAX you mentioned double Dutch as something you guys use a lot. Could you just share a little bit more about that?
Yeah, well, app technology is definitely something that we're promoting to our customers now. But that's just one of the areas around, our whole process is powered around technology because our company is all about data. But however, now we're working towards how to make that actionable data. So even the app, when we introduce an app, it has to be its functionality is extremely important, and working with the customer with what content actually goes in the app, what type of functionality would actually make sense for the type of attendees that are coming. A lot of the meetings that we do involve attendees that fly in from many different countries around the world. Having said that, they all have a smartphone, and their smartphone probably have different OSs. So the essential technology why we chose to go with double Dutch is because basically the OS of your phone, configures what you would see as an attendee when you launch the app. So if I'm on a Korean OS, I'm using a Samsung and it's Korean language,
so it just switches to
yeah,
the
everything
language
is Korean.
depending. Oh,
correct. So
wow.
the content, obviously cannot be in 13 or 20 languages, but at least the navigation panels and everything is something familiar. You don't feel foreign to it, when you launch it. Also, we have to build very practical things like if we're doing a mega conference and we're talking about thousands of people trying to navigate their way to different booths, we've built into the app that technology where you can just use the GPS function to find your booth, and it actually guides you and things like that. So it needs to be
can be very useful.
Yeah.
Well, there's a question that's got 9 votes here from the floor. Which is the real enabler for the events industry? So is it technology or is it customer service? Janet, what do you think?
I would say more would have to be, it depends on the aspect. I think that a lot of if I see association work or corporate, technology is used to free up what I would say is administrative. For the IBM thing, I think it's very interesting, and they're capturing data for their use, for their knowledge. But a lot of times, if you're doing thousands of people registration and thousands of people that have to go for their meetings, I think technology that is user-friendly and that's easy would be, I would say, the prime aim. My belief is attention to detail, keep it simple, and then I think people will just be freed up of the time to actually meet who they want and do the network that they want. If that's all of it is applicable. There's so many applications. You're using Pigeonhole, and I think for the questions and answers, but there are so many others that have from and A to Z. So it really, it depends.
It depends. So it's
what-
both. It's a combination.
Yeah, yes.
What about gamification?
I'll come to game. I think the biggest thing with technology, people, Janet, you said it before, but to go deeper is you have to be committed to it. There's no point
Correct.
using Pigeonhole and not putting it. That's why we've got the signs up all here that people think, oh, we'll use an app, but then you as an event organizer have to have a whole team managing it for the content because the technology isn't the solution. The solution is what you actually do with it. And I think something that I say internally, we've just built a new app, we've taken a few things. I'm saying, well, for our event in Singapore, I want at least 2-3 team members managing the app. You know, if you're going to be sending notifications, do it. It's like, as a company, you don't just open a Twitter account and then think you're going to get followers. You have to fight for it. And gamification is an interesting one that something that we're actually piloting in our event in Singapore is we get a lot of regional innovation days. So big brands, Unilever, P&G will bring their teams and they'll do an innovation day at our event. And as you know, most what that usually means, you'll come for the first day, they'll have a very big night out, and we'll see them at 4 o'clock on the second day. So what we've designed with them is a way to make the conference much more exciting, that go and take a picture of the 3 coolest technologies, find this booth here, what's happening here. So we're working with a very cool technology provider so that everyone has almost it's like a treasure hunt. It's a way in which record a boomerang video in one of the sessions so that we're keeping people at the event for 2 days. Because the biggest problem we all know in events is everybody thinks that it's, you know, you do a 2-day event, you pray everybody turns up on the second day, and you pray everybody stays to second afternoon. So to try and keep that going, it's an interesting concept. If I'm invited back next year, I'll tell you if it's worked or not. We can see some of it will, because we're then working with each brand to make it, but it's an enormously labor-intensive process.
Yeah, so I'm hearing that technology, it's not a solution, it's really an enabler, but a lot of work needs to go around making it work right? And the other thing, I suppose, is how do you use technology so that it's not a distraction, but really a form of deeper engagement, getting people to stay longer and stay engaged. Yeah. So it can actually work a lot, right, if we use it properly.
It's something that I actually say to startups. You don't want to be a startup for the sake of being a startup. A startup really should be a company solving a problem that happens to be young. So for the tech in our sector should be a challenge that we all see, and then that solves it. So the app is, you know, an example, because otherwise people are just making things, you know, we'll have drones giving the agendas out. So, I mean, you know, we can really go these things too far.
Okay, now just back to some of the questions again. Well, one of them is, who decides on the experiences? Is it the mature decision makers, or is it the millennials? Is it the delegates or the event owners? So how should businesses target and position to stay in the game?
I think from where we are charged with that responsibility. I mean, we had the good fortune of working with some of the biggest brands on either sales kickoffs or partner summits or around the world. I mean, we do Dreamforce for Salesforce globally, where we, you know, 200,000 people in San Fran.
So who made the decisions then?
We do.
Oh, you do?
Okay. No, not we, but as an agency, we are responsible for constantly pushing new ideas in front of the client. And that's what they expect from us. And they don't want to be fed the same thing they got fed last year. And so then it's up for our tech guys, our creative guys, our account guys to all sit together and collaborate on what story they want to tell, and then how do we put it forward to it in a bite-sized package so that client A understands it and B will say yes.
Okay.
But that must be related to a specific industry, what you're speaking about.
When I say, I think, we'd speak about big tech events. I speak about VR for experiences or touchscreen experiences for the auto shows that we do. Technology for us is not an app, it is gamification. It is it's touchscreens and writing that content. It's building we built something for Toyota, which was an interactive vending machine where you got your photo taken and something's dispensed to tell the brand safety story.
So it's really not just an app, it's a lot more than that. It allows you to touch, feel, taste, engage.
Yeah, it's engaging. We write and we storyboard with the client, and then we push it, and then we actually deliver it.
Okay.
I think every event organizer, whether that's across the MICE, should always look at each event, what can I do different than at the next event? But I also think something that people should be careful of is making something localized. I'll give you an example. In Singapore, we take over Am Siang Hill. We'll bring out 3,000. It's the most amazing night activity. We take over the bars there and people stay on. Our event's in Marina Bay Sands, so it's quite close. So for our London event, we said, let's change. Let's copy the same concept. Our London event is in December, by the way. So we realized that firstly, it's freezing. Second of all, we wanted to go to a cool area, but our venue was far away, and it didn't work as well because we realized that the shortness of the journey time, weather, small things matter. So we realized the other way, what works in Singapore might not work in London, and what works in Miami might not work here. So it's important to try. We're grateful that we tried because the following year we improved it. We did it next to the venue in London. We made sure there was heaters and all sorts of others. And I think people don't be embarrassed to try something if it doesn't work. The worst case scenario, people just got a bit cold. It's important to try and then don't use a small failure, but analyze what didn't work and improve it for the next time.
But if you do your event that you own, I think you can actually say that don't be afraid to try, and if it fails, I mean, you're the one that's carrying it. I mean, if you have clients who are bringing in 3,500 people or 2,000 and they want to have a local experience, quite frankly, it's very important to succeed.
Yeah.
So I would say experience counts a lot for something like this. And again, you don't forget all the elements between budgets, interactiveness, enjoying the event and so forth. But what I was interested in learning from Joel is that you know, even if you're creating for Toyota or whatever, what of the apps you're talking about, the purpose that you're doing is either getting the data or knowing something that is insightful for them to progress their business or to stay. It's not the sake of, exactly, but it's not, we don't create technology or we don't use it just because we think it's sexy or it's something you use when it's all difficult. You really apply what the solutions are you need for the client or what you think will be making it
So it shouldn't just be a retrospective,
analytical.
It's forward planning. It helps to drive strategy.
I would say the trick is to know what technology, unless you're doing it yourself, to know what's available outside for you to use and to make it seamless.
I think that's where we're blessed with having 40 offices in 18 different countries. So we can cherry pick. We're quite a connected agency, and in our group there's 12 agencies, and we're all quite collaborative. So we give the guys a call and say, what have you got? And they'll give us a washing machine full of ideas, and they say, look, and pick one and we'll flesh it out for you. But they are technology strategists. They're content writers. We work with Fitbit at a global brand level. They come up with some more weird and wonderful ideas, and having access to those guys. I mean, we're just the mouthpiece locally, really.
It's just really about new ideas. So we have, in the audience with us today, a lot of our industry partners are from hotels, from venues, from attractions. What ideas do you have for what's the role they could play? How can they enable different experiences, deeper connections or customizations?
Well, I think your theme, partnering for success, is very good. I mean, Joel just shared that if he was dealing with a washing machine company, then he talks to all his various associates, and they would share the information. I think one of the sad things about our industry is I don't think a hotel would share what they do with the industry or incorporate it. I think we all work in silos. The hotels are doing what they're doing, whether it's a product and using the application, but they're offering concierge services, which appears to be sort of maybe marginalizing other businesses. They don't actually work together. They all maybe perhaps manage it themselves and do it themselves for
a lot
fear
more collaboration.
Yeah.
Adelaide?
So I think,
Yeah, well, I think that at the end, and our company is actually one of those that we've realized that over the years, we're ticking all the boxes for KPIs and ROIs and, all of those stuff. But at the end of the day, we're actually now revolutionizing the way we're working with our customers. So our operations team is moving to something called a smart concept, because we realized that at the end of the line, we're not talking to a robot. Every single person who gives us a call that we're actually servicing, from the time we start talking to them or we do the first qualifying call about their meeting, it's about them, it's also about their bosses, and all of these people have different needs. And then it's about the attendee. So how can we actually do it better? What we are starting to do with our operations, we're moving away from the hierarchical structure, and we're actually empowering the people at the front line to actually make critical decisions when they need to in a very fast way. What that means is that we no longer have team leaders and consultants and they have directors above them. We're cutting away all that red tape, and we're just saying that, all right, think about, based on your 20 years of experience of doing meetings, what is going to work for your customer, and then make that recommendation there and then. You don't need to get an approval to then go back to the customer. So it really improves that whole interaction piece, and to really understand that we always put ourselves, say, I am the delegate, this is what I do. So what we talked about the apps, before we actually roll out the app with our customers, every single one of our employees were able to actually test the app as a user. And through the using, we were able to share information and talk about what worked for us, what didn't work for us. And because they're actually able to say that, well, I used the app and this was my experiences from it, it becomes a more credible story for the person you're talking to. Because if you're just talking about a technology, but you don't actually not used it, you don't know anything about it, you don't have that story or personalized thing behind it to kind of try to convince the person
you have to do
why
all the
you're
homework,
selling.
like Daniel said. You have to have a team supporting. You have to know how to use it for it to be effective.
And I think that links to the rest of the stakeholders. If you're doing a convention, bringing, I don't know, the Spine Doctors Association, the hotels involved should also take on something as well, whether that's making more experiential in the rooms, because I often find that a lot of times, sometimes that there's the detachment that you need all stakeholders to be involved, and do their little bit of making that small thing, and whether it's, everyone ultimately has budgets, responsibilities, but making that nicer welcome banner the hotels can do that's above and beyond, that then helps the event organizer. It's those extra touches, and if everybody feels ownership of the event, because ultimately everybody wants, for whoever you are, whether you're the event owner to the service provider to the people, that everybody comes out there saying everybody worked hard, tried their best, and gave a positive experience. That's what counts. And I also think, certainly for me, because obviously I use a lot of production companies, AV companies, I always like, ultimately, in each region, you want someone's expertise. So I often will say to my customers, tell me what you think will work here. We use Marina Bay Sands once a year. These guys use it 100 times a year. So you know what works in that room in comparison. And I think that's what a client relationship is about, is don't be scared to give your client your idea, because ultimately that they want that. And when the event's better, everyone benefits.
There's a lot of involvement, a lot more getting...
Show care, and show that you're committed.
So that's the customer service that comes in. I think we mentioned that. Okay, so we've talked a lot about millennials, what they are, what they want, how to go about doing it. They're not just the meeting delegates today, they're also joining us as peers in the industry. So do you think there's still common traits? In today's climate, is safety and security still the top concern? Or do you think it's really just about driving experience or a balance?
Safety and security is definitely very important now, because anything can happen anywhere. So duty of care for travelers is really something that we're trying to focus some sort of technology around as well. I think the business travel world is not as mature as the consumer industry today, where there's actually ready technology out there. A lot of what our company is investing in is really to help those corporates get there. When you say that someone's at a meeting, how do you actually know where they are? Because yes, Singapore, they're in Singapore, so something happens, somewhere. Now, how do we make sure that we can locate that person well? And we've had a lot of learnings, all from the Mumbai bombings, to the Japan tsunami 311. All of those things, well, personally, I have been involved, and it was a nightmare just tracking people. But it is something that we just have to make sure that we invest in, and I think a lot of our customers understand that now, that you can have the fun time of your life, but you also need to be accountable for the people that you bring to the event.
Definitely safety is still very important. Okay, we're going to just wrap up quickly. Maybe Andrew, if I could get you to share MICE 2020 and what we've been doing at it. I know, I think it was 2-3 years ago, very much at TIC when we did on this plan with stakeholders here. Can I just get you to take
Well, I think for those who are here in 2014, we came together to conceptualize the MICE 2020 plan, and I think it's really about identifying our competitive advantage and also to strengthen our existing ones. 3 concepts came up from there, just to have a very quick recap. Singapore as being a very connected, smart MICE city, where it's convenient and seamless Wi-Fi, people get to where they want and what they want, and also to harness the big data analytics to customize the business across the visitor experience. I think we talk a lot about today about customer experience and so on, and how do you look at the whole customer experience journey, which nobody owns, but at the various touch points where we could harness technology to enhance it. And not forgetting that I think for most people in the room, we are in the business of handshakes, we are in the business of face-to-face. I think technology will not be able to eradicate the part about interactions. So I think high touch is equally important. So that's about the Singapore MICE experience. We want to be a business destination that's inspiring, it's immersive, with new experience. And Singapore, coming to Singapore is more than just business. It's about networking, it's about interactions and insightful data that you can go off with. And I think the last pillar is really about the capability. I mean, you can have the best ideas, but how do you equip people with the skill sets, the tools, to embrace technology and to harness it? And I think it's a good time to do a stock take. It has been 3 years since we launched MICE 2020. I think Janet, you are one of the members, together with some of you sitting in the room. If you look at Connected City, you hear this morning about our Tourism Information and Services Hub. So this is going to provide a real-time information and travel services. And it's going to get very powerful, where consumers could even connect it to power their own apps and devices. We talk about STAN, which is our tourism analytics framework. So that's really talking about harnessing insights and looking at the data that will be useful to make our work even better and sharper. And we invite our stakeholders to be part of it. We have been test-baiting a couple of digital partnerships. So every business visitors who come to Singapore is a leisure visitor after event hours. So how do you look at the leisure component, right? When we look at the Ting Labs, which is actually a very handy complementary device where we test-bait with several hotels so that you could use the information to explore Singapore. We also test-bait with Kakao Partnership, you might have heard, to launch Travel Life Singapore using user-generated content from South Korea and customizing some of the itineraries. We talk about data analytics and video analytics, very important for us to look at traffic flow. I think our challenge when it comes to a big exhibition is really how to get people out of the exhibition hall, where there are huge crowds coming out. How do you use video analytics and data analytics to get the taxi drivers to come here and to streamline the whole process? And last but not least, the Singapore MICE experience is really about the high touch. When we go to do our roadshows where people do not have the chance to come to Singapore, we bring technology to them by letting them experience with our VR goggles, with our projection room. And I think Daniel, you had mentioned the urban experience. It was a very good thing that we do last year for InnoFest and Bar, where we bring networking out of the MICE venue into one of the traditional precincts. Gamification, we talk about that, using the Proken Smart Delegation Pass prototype, so that makes networking and exchange of name cards more interesting. We used the MICE app last year, and that is really a platform where you look at the end-to-end value chain from registration, giving feedback, and even networking with the stakeholders. And last but not least, I think from Singapore Tourism Board perspective, how do we connect all the dots to make sure that partnership alliance become important? So we launched the Inspire program. We have the SMAP program as well that looks at connecting the different touch points so that the business travelers could also use technology to enhance their experience.
Okay, great. Well, up to the end of the session, of the panel session, any last thoughts? Maybe if I could go around the panel. Do you think we're ready for the future? How well do you think we're set up? What are the opportunities for Singapore? Just very quickly. Sure.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think I look at it from 2 perspectives. I think we've just lost one of our biggest events in our portfolio to Sydney, which was in Singapore. And it has been in Singapore for the last 3 years, and so they fly 3,000 people in from around the region. Unfortunately, we've lost it to Sydney, but we'll still support Sydney. So I think one of the previous speakers spoke about being stagnant. I think we need to keep evolving as Singapore to provide them something different, and there needs to be more. I think that was a failure on our agency as well, to be honest, because I think we needed to be a lot better, and a lot of that was a cost as well. On the flip side, we've had 2 associations come in from Australia who work with the Australian office, wanting to come into Asia. Into 2018, we get them coming into Singapore because Singapore provides that safe destination to go and the easiness of travel.
I think that with particularly the concentration on activities and the innovativeness that is being done for Singapore, although it's very much for the leisure tourism, I think the MICE and events or the business events market can certainly tap on it. I think safety is one of the biggest thing, and I think that I see potentially for Singapore. I think as Christian was sharing on the direct marketing, I think big numbers will come in here. The only thing I would say that for Singapore, what is perfect is all the different market mixes of what comes under the business event. So I would encourage everyone to look towards it positively, particularly some of the elements that we have. But I think partnering for success, which I would congratulate the board for the theme, would really be something a little bit more serious with all the different players.
A lot more
To
collaboration.
look at it, yes.
Daniel?
Thank you.
I think Singapore is in an amazing place for really three main reasons. One is the demographics are on your side. You know this region is going much more prominent, and the fact that you've got, I work in many places around the world, and I've never seen such alignment from government agencies, from corporates, all being there. So I think one is you've got amazing infrastructure, you've got the size works to your advantage. You can have people at a venue, then going to downtown, and then people going to restaurants. So it's that small actually here is great, especially in an event, because you want to keep people contained. And there's the reliability, that the suppliers here are good, that everything that people are going to say are going to do. So I think it's only going to get better, and I think it's for everybody just to work together, and it's for us it's reassurance being here that we know there's things that are going to get done.
For me, I think Singapore is in a very good place. We work with a lot of CVBs across the world, and I think your plan is probably one of the most solid in terms of, or maybe it's just you being able to present what you have planned, right? And I think a lot of it is not so much about what plans there are, but really about whether the customer, or the end users, the people actually coming to Singapore, how do we make them aware of it? So, in our company, we feel that every day we're in this education position. Every single one of our staff is trying to educate whoever they speak to, and also the partners, in this case, the hotels, the vendors, the third parties that we're using. Because a meeting doesn't come together just by us doing it. We need all of these people coming together. However, making sure that everybody has the same vision. They know very clearly what the priorities are, and then delivering to that is what we're trying to do. And we feel that Singapore is really taking the lead, and that partnership would really help to bring more people here.
So that's very nicely wraps up our panel. Thank you so much. I think it's really about partnering for success in line with today's theme. Any final questions from the floor before we break for lunch? I know most of you have directed your questions. Any other questions from the floor? Okay, otherwise, thank you very much. I'm sure you can still catch up with every one of them at lunch. Just wanted to finish off with a quote. It's from an evergreen children's book. And, I think it's going to be relevant for many, many more generations of millennials to come. So with that, thank you very much. Please join me, ladies and gentlemen.